Every day, a roadside food vendor, her face etched with the quiet resilience of someone used to hard work, would offer a small portion of her day's earnings to a skinny, silent boy. She asked nothing in return, knew nothing of the story behind his haunted eyes. Then, one still morning, the ordinary rhythm of her days shattered. For gleaming black SUVs, like predatory beasts, purred to a halt directly in front of her humble shop. Her life, until then a predictable melody of toil and quiet hope, was about to be rewritten in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. Who were these imposing figures emerging from the tinted windows? And what was the invisible thread that connected the boy to their world of privilege and power? Prepare to have your heartstrings tugged as we unravel this poignant tale. In the quiet outskirts of Abuja, where the asphalt cracked and faded away from the opulent avenues, lived a small boy named Austin. Though only 6 years old, life had prematurely aged him, imprinting a weariness on his young face. Each morning, before the fierce Nigerian sun fully clawed its way above the horizon, he would slip out of the skeletal, unfinished building he and his mother called home. A silent mantra played in his head. I must find food today. Mommy needs to eat. Inside the small, roughly fashioned room they had carved out amidst the cold concrete and exposed rebar, Austin's mother, Vivian, lay weakened by a relentless kidney disease. Some days, she barely possessed the strength to lift her head from the makeshift pillow. Yet, with each departure of her son, she summoned a fragile smile. Austin, she would whisper, her voice thin as spun glass. Please be careful and come home early. I will, Mommy, Austin would reply, his small hand briefly clasping hers. A silent promise exchanged before he ventured out into the harsh world. But life hadn't always been a relentless struggle. Years before Austin's birth, Vivian had been vibrant, a young woman brimming with hope. Fresh out of university, she had established a small provision shop, a humble venture that was entirely her own. She sold everyday staples: rice, beans, milk, bread, and an assortment of small snacks. The shop provided for her basic needs and fueled her dreams of a brighter future. During that hopeful period, love had also blossomed. His name was Gabriel. They had met during their university days. He was intelligent, kind, and overflowing with ambition. He dreamed of pursuing a master's degree abroad, a goal that seemed within reach when he secured a scholarship. However, the scholarship didn't cover the exorbitant costs of processing his travel documents. Vivian, captivated by his potential and deeply in love, selflessly poured almost all her savings into supporting his aspirations. Gabriel, don't worry, she had assured him. One day, everything will work out. He would respond, his voice filled with gratitude. Thank you, Vivian. I promise I will make you proud. When Gabriel finally secured the necessary funds and departed for overseas, they maintained a constant stream of communication. Vivian would erupt in laughter at the sound of his voice. She felt certain that their future was secure, bathed in the golden light of promise. But then, a chilling silence descended. 2 weeks after his arrival, his calls abruptly ceased. Vivian tried desperately to reach him, her calls echoing unanswered into the digital void. She was consumed by worry, her nights filled with silent tears and fervent prayers. Why can't I reach him? She repeatedly asked the uncaring universe. No answer came. Within another 2 weeks, she began experiencing unsettling changes in her body. A persistent weakness clung to her. Nausea became a constant companion, and she felt profoundly different. Seeking answers, she visited a hospital where the doctor delivered life-altering news. She was pregnant. Vivian stared at the doctor, her mind reeling. Pregnant? She whispered, the word a fragile question in the sterile air. How will I care for this child alone? Despite the overwhelming uncertainty, she made a firm decision. She would embrace motherhood. Months later, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, whom she named Austin. As Austin blossomed into a bright and cheerful child, Vivian poured her heart and soul into providing for him. She worked tirelessly to cover his kindergarten fees and delighted in purchasing small toys whenever she could afford them. They weren't wealthy, but their small lives were filled with a quiet joy. Then the cruel hand of fate struck again. When Austin reached the age of 4, Vivian began experiencing debilitating fatigue. Initially, she attributed it to stress, but the symptoms progressively worsened. Her legs felt heavy, her stomach constantly churned, and she often felt on the verge of collapse. One morning, as Vivian attempted to rise and fetch a glass of water, her legs buckled beneath her, sending her stumbling. Austin, with the quick reflexes of a child who had learned to be vigilant, grabbed onto her clothes with his tiny hands. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Austin asked, his eyes wide with alarm. Vivian forced a weak smile. "Sorry, dear. Mommy's just tired. Don't mind me." Austin stared at her, confused and worried. "Mommy, sit down," he said softly, guiding her gently. But deep down, Vivian knew this was more than just mere exhaustion. Seeking answers, she went to the hospital. After a battery of tests, the doctor sat her down, his expression grave. "Vivian," he said gently, "you have kidney failure. You need a transplant. And until that's possible, you'll require dialysis twice a week." Vivian felt tears welling up in her eyes. "How much will all this cost, doctor?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "A lot, Vivian," the doctor replied, his gaze filled with compassion. "And you must travel abroad for the transplant." Vivian fought with every ounce of her being, but dialysis proved to be prohibitively expensive. Gradually, over the course of 2 agonizing years, her savings evaporated. She sold her freezer, then her small collection of furniture, each transaction a painful surrender to her grim reality. Even after sacrificing everything, it wasn't enough. She could no longer afford rent, and Austin's school fees remained unpaid, forcing him to withdraw from his studies. With hearts heavy with despair, Vivian and Austin were evicted from the place they had once called home. Vivian wept as she carried her son, their few possessions bundled in worn bags, out of the only life he had ever known. They sought refuge in a dusty, neglected corner of an unfinished building. She cleaned it as best she could, transforming the bare space into their new, makeshift home. Now, without a shop, with no money remaining, and with Vivian lying helpless on the floor, Austin, a mere 6 years old, had no choice but to wander the streets each day, begging for scraps of food or small coins to sustain them. One morning, as he shuffled along the busy roadside, his bare feet burning on the scorching pavement, he clutched his rumbling stomach and whispered a desperate prayer. "Mommy must not go hungry today. I must find something. Anything." Austin continued his slow, weary trek along the bustling road. Cars and motorcycles whizzed past, indifferent to his small presence. He navigated the traffic cautiously, looking left and right. He approached a woman clutching a nylon bag, his voice barely audible above the din. "Auntie, please, small help," he pleaded. The woman cast a fleeting glance at him, then shook her head dismissively and hurried on. Austin swallowed his disappointment and tried again. He stepped towards a man purchasing something from a roadside stall. "Sir, please, I am hungry." The man waved him away without even turning his head. Austin's small heart clenched with pain, but he pressed on. He approached another woman. "Please, auntie," but she only frowned and retorted, "I don't have anything," before walking away. Some people ignored him as if he were invisible. Others stared at him with pity, but still walked past without offering any assistance. Each rejection felt like a physical blow. He stared at his feet as he walked, the dust swirling around his ankles. He felt exhausted, disheartened, and utterly alone. But he did not give up. He repeated his mantra, "Mommy must eat. I must find something." So he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, took another small step, and kept moving forward. After what felt like an eternity, he spotted a small, local roadside food shop. It was a clean and modest establishment, smoke curling invitingly from a pot simmering outside. The savory aroma of the food intensified the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. He edged closer, step by hesitant step, almost as if he feared being chased away. Beside the shop, he saw a simple wooden bench. Austin sat down gently, placing his small hands on his knees. His eyes, filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension, followed the people passing by. He didn't utter a word, simply hoping and waiting. Unbeknownst to him, his life was about to undergo a dramatic transformation. Someone somewhere was about to truly see him. Inside the small roadside food shop, Nora moved with practiced efficiency between the tables. The shop was her livelihood, a modest establishment she had built with her own 2 hands. It wasn't lavish or grand, but it was the only thing she possessed. This shop was her lifeline, her means of survival. She wiped down tables, served steaming plates of food, and greeted her customers with a genuine smile, even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. At only 25 years old, she carried heavy responsibilities on her shoulders. Her rent had increased, her savings were dwindling, and she desperately yearned to return to school one day. Each day, as she labored, she repeated her personal affirmation, "Nora, don't give up, keep trying." After the morning rush subsided, she stood outside with a bowl of soapy water and began washing plates. As she worked, something caught her attention. A small boy was sitting alone on the bench beside her shop. His legs were pathetically thin, his clothes worn and faded. But what truly struck Nora was his face. His eyes, though weary, held an innocence that seemed too pure for the harsh realities he clearly faced. They were hauntingly quiet, a quality that seemed unnatural in a child. Nora paused, her hands suspended midair, a soapy plate clutched in her fingers. "Who is this boy?" she whispered to herself. She carefully placed the plate back into the bowl and slowly walked towards him. As she approached, she bent down slightly, trying to make eye contact. "Hello," she said gently. "My name is Nora. What is your name?" The boy looked up slowly, his gaze hesitant. "Austin," he replied in a soft voice. Nora offered a small, reassuring smile. "Austin, why are you sitting here alone? Are you waiting for someone?" Austin looked down at his small hands, nervously rubbing his fingers together. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, I'm hungry." Nora's heart softened instantly upon hearing those words. She gazed at the boy with profound empathy. There was something about him that hinted at a deeper pain than mere hunger. It felt as though he was concealing a painful truth, yet his starvation was undeniable. Without pressing for further details, she stood up abruptly and hurried inside her shop. "Let me get him something to eat," she murmured to herself. She scooped a generous portion of warm food onto a plate and carried it back outside. "Here, Austin," she said gently, offering him the plate. "Eat first." Austin's face brightened slightly. "Thank you, Auntie," he said, his voice filled with heartfelt gratitude. But instead of immediately digging in, Austin looked up at her, his eyes questioning. "Auntie, please, do you have a nylon or small pack?" Nora paused, taken aback by his request. "Why?" she wondered. Austin clutched the plate close to his chest and said quietly, "I want to take it home." Nora's heart constricted again. She didn't fully grasp the situation, but she instinctively knew that the boy was telling the truth. Dismissing her surprise, she went inside to retrieve a food container. She returned, carefully repacked the food for him, and tied the bag securely. "Here you go," she said, handing him the package. "Hold it carefully." Austin took the nylon bag gingerly, almost as if he were holding something incredibly precious. "Thank you, Auntie." "Thank you," he repeated. Then, without warning, he turned and ran off with a sudden urgency in his gait. Nora watched him disappear down the road, a mixture of confusion and concern etched on her face. Why is he in such a hurry? She wondered. What is this boy hiding? Something about Austin lingered in her thoughts, refusing to be dismissed. From that moment on, she sensed that this little boy's story was far from ordinary. Austin ran as fast as his small legs could carry him. When he reached the unfinished building, he slipped inside and carefully closed the rough wooden board that served as their door. "Mommy, I'm back," he whispered. Vivian lay on the thin mat in the corner, her eyes barely open. She didn't even possess the strength to lift her head. Austin gently placed the food on the mat. Then, he rushed to the plastic plates stacked beside the wall. His small hands trembled slightly as he washed one plate with a meager amount of water, trying his best to make it clean. He scooped some food onto the plate and carried it carefully to his mother. "Mommy, please eat," he said softly. Vivian looked at him with weak eyes. She wanted to speak, but her voice failed her. She hadn't eaten since the previous day. Her hands were too weak to lift the spoon. So Austin knelt beside her and began to feed her, little by little. He lifted each spoonful slowly, watching her mouth intently, waiting for her to swallow before offering her another bite. Vivian managed to whisper, "Thank you, my son." Austin nodded. "Mommy, eat some more, please." When she had eaten enough, he offered her a little water, carefully guiding the cup to her lips to prevent any spillage. Then, he took a small cloth and wiped her mouth gently, mimicking the way she used to care for him when he was a baby. After tending to his mother, he served himself. He didn't sit on the mat, choosing instead to sit on the bare floor on the opposite side of the small room. He ate slowly, his eyes fixed on the open window. He missed school. He missed learning, the thrill of discovering new things. He missed playing and running with other children, the carefree joy of childhood. But ever since his mother had fallen ill, there was no money for school fees. He had been forced to quit. He had been compelled to grow up far too quickly. Later that evening, Vivian's strength returned slightly. She turned her head towards him. "Austin," she said softly, "where did you get the food?" Austin sat beside her and held up the empty nylon bag. "Mommy, I saw a small food shop by the road. I sat on the bench there because I was tired. One auntie came out. Her name is Auntie Nora. She saw me and asked my name. I told her I was hungry, and she went inside and brought food for me." Vivian blinked slowly. "Nora," she whispered. "You don't know her?" "No, Mommy, I don't know her. She just helped me. She gave me food, and I told her I wanted to take it home, so she packed it for me." Vivian's eyes welled up with tears. "God bless her," she whispered. "May God lift her up. May she never suffer. May she never lack." Austin looked at her quietly, her tears causing his small heart to ache. He crawled closer and wrapped his arms around her. Vivian held him weakly. "Mommy," Austin whispered, "don't cry. I am here." They held each other tightly, mother and son, in the quiet room, until their eyes slowly closed, and they drifted off to sleep together. Later that evening, Nora walked into her small room after a long and arduous day at the shop. She dropped her bag on the wooden chair and sat down with a tired sigh. Her legs ached, her back throbbed, but she still reached for her bag and retrieved the few notes she had earned that day. She pulled a large savings box from beside her shelf. It was old and worn, with a narrow slit at the top. She slipped the money inside, one note at a time. As the notes disappeared into the box, she whispered, "Please grow. Please grow." She desperately needed the money. Her rent was overdue. Her dreams of returning to school hung in the balance, and her life felt stagnant, even as her financial burdens mounted. When she finished, she pushed the wooden piggy bank back into its corner and lay down on her thin mattress. She stared at the ceiling in silence. The room was stifling, and the single bulb flickered weakly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Her mind swirled with worries. How will I pay rent next month? When will I ever have enough to go back to school? Why is life so relentlessly challenging? Tears pricked at her eyes. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and forced herself to breathe deeply. Then, a memory surfaced, causing her to pause. Austin. She pictured the small boy who had sat outside her shop earlier that day. His small hands, his quiet voice, and especially his eyes. Eyes that seemed to carry a weight far beyond his years. Eyes that held a sad secret. Nora sat up slightly. "That child is hiding something," she whispered to herself. "Something he is afraid to reveal." She remembered his request for a container to carry the food home. She remembered the frantic haste with which he had run off. And she remembered how painfully thin he looked. She wondered, he is too small to be walking alone like that. She lay back slowly, her thoughts still consumed by Austin. A small smile touched her lips. "At least I helped him today," she said softly. "I hope he is okay." She hoped he would return. She hoped to ask him some questions, to unravel the mystery surrounding his young life. She hoped to understand what he was going through. As these thoughts filled her heart, her eyelids grew heavy. Nora turned onto her side, hugged her pillow, and allowed sleep to claim her. Early the next morning, Austin stepped out of the unfinished building once more. His clothes were the same, his stomach was still empty. His eyes were tired, but he stubbornly whispered to himself, "I must find food for me and Mommy." He began walking along the roadside, approaching person after person. "Please, Auntie, help me with some money," he pleaded with a woman carrying a handbag. She scrutinized him from head to toe and frowned. "Go away," she snapped, waving her hand dismissively. Austin moved towards a man standing beside a parked car. "Sir, please help me with food." The man didn't even acknowledge his presence. He opened his car door and drove off, leaving Austin choking in the dust. Austin walked up to another man. "Please, uncle, I am hungry." "I don't have anything," the man retorted sharply. Some people ignored him completely. Others chased him away like a stray dog. Some looked at him with disgust, as if he were a speck of dirt. A few stared at him with pity, but still walked past without offering any assistance. Austin was accustomed to the rejection, but that didn't diminish the pain. His tiny feet burned on the hot pavement. His throat felt parched. His heart felt heavy. But he continued his relentless pursuit. He had to get something for his mother. He couldn't return empty-handed. Meanwhile, back at the roadside food shop, Nora was busy serving customers. She moved efficiently from table to table, carrying plates of steaming food. But every few minutes, her gaze would drift towards the road, scanning the faces passing by. "Is he coming today?" she wondered. "Where is that little boy?" She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering. "I hope he is safe." The day stretched on. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down relentlessly. Customers came and went. Still, there was no sign of Austin. As evening approached, Austin trudged slowly along the dusty road. He had been out all day, and he had gotten absolutely nothing, not even a single coin. His heart felt weak with despair. His legs felt like lead. He wanted to cry, but no tears came. "Mommy will be waiting," he whispered to himself. "And I have nothing." He stopped walking for a moment, his shoulders slumped. Then a thought flickered in his mind. Nora, the kind woman from yesterday, the one who had given him food without shouting or chasing him away. Austin looked up at the sky, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Should I go there again?" he whispered. He hesitated. He didn't want to impose on her kindness. He didn't know if she would help him again. But he had no other choice. He turned his small body in the direction of Nora's shop. Step by hesitant step, weak but filled with a sliver of hope, he began to walk in her direction. And with each tiny step, he offered a silent prayer. Please let her be there. Please. He didn't realize it, but Nora had been waiting for him, too. Austin dragged his tired body along the road, taking slow, weary steps. His stomach was empty, gnawing at his insides. His eyes were dull with fatigue. When he reached the small roadside food shop, he tried to act casual, as if he were simply walking past, casually looking around with no particular purpose in mind. He stood near the corner, hoping she would notice him. Nora was wiping down a table when she caught a glimpse of a small shadow moving outside. She looked up and there he was. "Austin," she called out gently, a note of relief in her voice. Austin turned slowly and walked towards her. His heart felt a flicker of warmth just hearing her voice. "Good evening, Auntie," he said, offering a small, hesitant smile. Nora bent down slightly so she could see his face clearly. "Austin, I haven't seen you since morning. Where did you go?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Austin shifted uneasily on his feet. He looked down at his fingers, fidgeting nervously. I was walking around," he said quietly. "I was begging to see if someone would help me. I wanted to get something for me and for my mother." Nora's face softened with compassion. Your mommy, she repeated. Is she okay? Austin shook his head slowly, his eyes downcast. No, Auntie, she is not. She cannot walk well. She is always tired. She is very sick. Nora's heart tightened with sympathy. What kind of sickness? She asked gently. Austin swallowed hard, struggling to articulate the enormity of their situation. She cannot stand for long. She lies down every day. The doctor said she needs treatment. He paused, then added softly, We don't have money for anything. Nora felt a profound ache in her heart. She placed her hand on his small shoulder, offering a gesture of comfort and support. Austin, listen to me, she said, her voice firm but kind. You don't need to walk around like this every day. Come here every day. I will keep food for you. Austin looked up quickly, his eyes wide with disbelief. Every day? He asked, his voice filled with wonder. Yes, Nora said firmly. Every single day. I don't have much, but I will not let you and your mommy starve. Austin's eyes softened with gratitude. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you. Wait here, Nora said. She walked into her shop and scooped some rice into 2 nylon bags. One for Austin and one for his mother. When she returned, she bent down and handed him the food. Hold it carefully, she instructed. Austin clutched the nylons tightly. Thank you, he whispered again. His voice choked with emotion. Nora looked at him closely, studying his gaunt features. His face was too thin, his lips were dry and cracked. She realized with a pang of guilt that he hadn't eaten anything all day. You cannot go home like this, she said, her voice firm. Sit down. Austin blinked, taken aback by her insistence. But Auntie. No, she interrupted softly, preventing any further protest. Sit. You need food now. She went inside again and came out with her own plate, the food she had planned to eat for dinner. She placed it in front of him. Eat, she said gently. You are just a child. Your body needs strength. Austin looked at her with wide, grateful eyes. Then he sat down slowly and began to eat. He took small, deliberate bites, as if he didn't want the precious food to disappear too quickly. Nora watched him silently, her heart breaking for him. As he ate, she whispered to herself, What kind of life is this little boy living? And for the first time, she understood something profound. Austin didn't just need food. He needed someone who cared, someone who would see him, not just as another nameless face on the street, but as a child deserving of compassion and kindness. And without realizing it, Nora was becoming that person, a beacon of hope in his bleak world. Austin walked home, his small hands clutching the 2 nylon bags tightly. The road was quiet, the sounds of the city fading into the distance. His legs were weary, but his heart felt lighter than it had in a long time. He had something good to bring back to his mother, a tangible sign that they hadn't been completely forgotten by the world. When he reached the small room, he pushed the rough board door open gently. Mommy, I'm back, he said, his voice filled with a newfound hope. Vivian lifted her head slowly, a faint smile gracing her lips. Austin, welcome, she whispered. Austin nodded eagerly and placed the 2 nylon bags beside her. Mommy, look, Auntie Nora helped me again. She said I can come every day. Vivian blinked in surprise. Auntie who? Auntie Nora, Austin explained. The woman at the food shop. She gave me food again, Mommy. She said I should not walk around begging. She said I should come to her every day. Vivian's eyes welled up with tears. Come closer, my son, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Austin moved near her, and she held his tiny hand in hers. May God bless that woman, Vivian prayed softly, her voice filled with sincere gratitude. May her life be full of light. She has helped us even though she does not know us. Austin smiled and sat beside her, content to be near her. We will eat this tonight, Vivian said, pointing to one of the nylons. The other one we will keep for tomorrow morning. They both ate quietly, savoring each bite, grateful for the nourishment and the kindness that had made it possible. After eating, Vivian leaned back on her mat, still weak, but buoyed by a renewed sense of hope. "Austin," she said softly, "this woman, this Nora, she must be a truly kind person." Austin nodded emphatically. "She is, Mommy. She talks to me nice. She looks at me like she cares." Vivian smiled sadly, her heart filled with both joy and sorrow. "You deserve care, my son," she whispered. On the other side of the city, at that same time, Nora sat on her bed, the weight of the day still heavy on her shoulders. The room was dark, illuminated only by the weak glow of the single light bulb. She hugged her pillow tightly and stared up at the ceiling, her mind racing. She thought about Austin again, replaying the image of his thin hands, his quiet voice, and his tired eyes. She felt a deep well of empathy for him, a sense of connection that transcended their brief encounters. A heavy weight pressed on Nora's heart, an unyielding ache of empathy. How can such a young child bear so much pain? She murmured, her voice barely audible. Images flashed through her mind, the way Austin devoured the simple meals she offered, the earnestness with which he spoke of his mother, the transparent attempts to mask his overwhelming sadness. A deep sigh escaped her lips. "I wish I could do more," she confessed to the empty shop. "I wish I could truly make a difference for them." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her own concerns began to recede. The looming rent, the ever-present school fees, the dwindling savings, all faded into a muted background hum. Tonight, her heart was wholly consumed by Austin's plight. Little did she know that this small act of kindness, this quiet compassion, was about to propel her into a narrative far beyond the confines of her humble shop, a story she never could have foreseen. The following 3 weeks unfolded with a gentle rhythm. Almost every day, Austin would appear at Nora's doorstep, his small face illuminated by a tentative smile. And each day, true to her word, Nora would provide him with sustenance. Sometimes it was a portion of fragrant rice, other times hearty beans, occasionally whatever leftovers she had from her own meals. But always, he left with a full stomach and a lighter spirit. As the days turned into weeks, Nora found herself drawn to engage with him more deeply. Simple questions became a comforting ritual. "Austin, how was your night, dear? Did your mommy manage to eat well? Are you feeling all right today?" And Austin, sensing her genuine care, responded with an honesty that belied his young age. He felt safe in her presence, shielded from the harsh realities of his life. Before long, he began to subtly integrate himself into the workings of the shop. Noticing Nora struggling with a mountain of dirty plates, Austin would tentatively approach. "Auntie, let me help you," he'd offer, his small brow furrowed with earnestness. Nora would invariably shake her head, a gentle smile playing on her lips. "No, Austin, you're just a child. Go and sit down, relax." But Austin, with a stubbornness that both amused and touched her, would insist. "Auntie, I want to help. You help me too." And before she could fully protest, his small hands would be immersed in the soapy water, carefully scrubbing one plate after another. "You are a stubborn little thing, you know that?" Nora would say, her voice filled with warmth, and Austin would simply giggle, a quiet, infectious sound that warmed the corners of her heart. Slowly, organically, Nora had become more than just a provider to Austin. She was a confidant, a trusted friend, someone who truly saw him. And every evening, as he sat beside his mother in their meager dwelling, he would recount his day with Nora. "Mommy, today Auntie Nora gave me jollof rice. Mommy, I helped her wash the plates. Mommy, Auntie Nora is so kind." Vivian would listen, her eyes soft with gratitude. "God bless that woman," she'd murmur. "She is a true gift to us." One afternoon, as Nora handed Austin his usual food pack, she knelt down, bringing herself to his eye level. "Austin," she asked gently, "would it be all right if I met your mommy one day? I'd really like to meet her, see how she's doing." Austin blinked in surprise, his eyes widening. "You want to come to our house?" "Yes," Nora replied, her smile radiating warmth. "But only if she agrees, of course. I just want to visit her." That evening, Austin practically flew through the dusty streets, eager to share the news. "Mommy, Auntie Nora wants to see you. She wants to come to our house." Vivian was initially taken aback. "Me?" she questioned, a flicker of disbelief in her eyes. "Why would she want to see me?" "She wants to know how you're doing, Mommy. She just wants to see you." A slow, weary smile spread across Vivian's face. "Then tell her she can come, my darling. I would be honored to meet the woman who is so generously feeding my child." Austin nodded enthusiastically, his small face alight with happiness. 2 days later, Nora made the unusual decision to close her shop earlier than usual. She carefully selected a simple, yet respectable dress, packed a little extra food, along with a few small essentials in a nylon bag, and patiently waited for Austin to finish sweeping his favorite corner of the shop. "Ready?" she asked, her voice laced with a nervous anticipation. "Yes, Auntie," he replied, his small hand reaching for hers. Together, they set off, their footsteps echoing on the dusty road. Nora's heart hammered in her chest, a mixture of apprehension and excitement churning within her. She had no idea what to expect, no clear picture of the woman she was about to meet. As they reached the dilapidated, unfinished building, Nora paused, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The room was dimly lit and cramped, the air thick with a sense of weariness. Vivian lay on a thin, worn mat, her face etched with fatigue, but her eyes held a spark of warmth. "Good evening, ma'am," Nora said softly, offering a humble bow. Vivian managed a weak smile. "You must be the Nora my son talks about so fondly." "Yes, ma'am," she replied, offering the small bag she carried. "I brought a little food. I hope it helps." Vivian's eyes instantly welled up with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for taking such good care of us." Nora knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. "He is a good boy, and I promise I will continue to help him in any way I can. You are not alone in this." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Vivian felt a glimmer of hope wash over her, a soothing balm on her weary soul. And Nora felt something deeper stirring within her, a powerful connection drawing her inexorably toward this struggling family. 2 weeks later, continents away, a handsome man sat in the opulent comfort of his private jet, a glass of expensive wine swirling gently in his hand. The soft, diffused lighting cast a warm glow on his face, yet his eyes remained distant, lost in the labyrinth of his thoughts. This man was Gabriel. His tailored suit, his impeccably crafted shoes, the gleaming Rolex on his wrist, every detail screamed of wealth and power. But beneath the veneer of success, his heart remained restless, yearning for something intangible. He gazed out the cabin window as the clouds drifted lazily beneath the jet's wings. A sigh, barely audible, escaped his lips. "I am finally going back home," he whispered to himself, the words carrying a complex mix of anticipation and trepidation. Gabriel was now the co-founder of a burgeoning international tech company, a visionary who, along with his team, had created a groundbreaking software application that was currently valued in the billions of dollars. He was returning to the country a changed man, transformed by success and experience. But his motivations for returning were not purely business-related. There was someone, a figure from his past, who had occupied a permanent space in his thoughts for years. Someone he had never truly forgotten. Someone who had shown him kindness and love during a time when he had nothing. Someone who had believed in him when he was still a nobody. Vivian. He gently touched his chest, the memory of her name resonating within him. Images of her filled his mind, her radiant smile, her unwavering support, the warmth of her embrace. "Vivian, I hope you are okay," he murmured, his voice thick with longing. He recalled the early days after he had traveled abroad, the excitement of their daily conversations, the promises they had made. But then disaster had struck. His phone had been stolen, severing his connection to her, erasing all his contacts. "I am so sorry, Vivian," he whispered, his voice laced with regret. "I tried everything to find a way to reach you." He stared into his wine glass, the swirling liquid mirroring the turmoil within him. I just want to see her again. I desperately hope she hasn't given up on me. I pray she waited. He closed his eyes for a moment, clinging to the thought of her smile, her voice, the enduring love they had shared. He had no idea that Vivian was currently engaged in a desperate battle for survival, clinging to life in a dilapidated, unfinished building. As he sat in the lap of luxury, consumed by thoughts of Vivian and their shared past, the jet smoothly touched down at Abuja Airport. As he disembarked, a sleek black SUV, accompanied by 3 private security trucks, was already waiting to whisk him away to a luxury hotel. Back in the impoverished neighborhood, Austin continued his daily visits to Nora's shop. He would diligently sweep the area in front of the shop, his small body moving with purpose. He carefully washed the small stack of plates, his brow furrowed in concentration. And each time he completed a task, Nora would reward him with a warm smile and a few words of encouragement. "Austin, you are such a good boy," she'd say, her voice filled with genuine affection. Austin's smiles were now more frequent, more genuine. His eyes seemed to sparkle with a newfound light. His steps possessed a lightness that had been absent for so long. He even laughed occasionally, a sound that had been tragically rare in recent years. At home, Vivian observed the subtle but significant changes in her son with a quiet joy. Her own face, weakened by illness and hardship, would soften each time he bounded into their meager dwelling. "Mommy, today Auntie Nora taught me a new song. Mommy, she said I am brave. Mommy, she told me a wonderful story." Vivian listened with unwavering attention, her heart swelling with gratitude. Even though her body remained frail and weakened, her spirit felt renewed, buoyed by the kindness that had been extended to her son. Some weekends, Nora would close her shop early and visit them, bringing small gifts of fruit, biscuits, and extra food. Each visit felt like a ray of sunshine piercing the darkness of their small room, filling it with warmth and hope. Vivian found herself feeling less isolated, less alone in her suffering. The pain and sickness were still there, an unwelcome constant in her life, but now she had someone who genuinely cared, someone who treated her with respect and compassion, someone who made her feel like she still mattered. One afternoon, Nora sat outside their room, captivating Austin with a lively story. Austin listened with rapt attention, his eyes wide with wonder, then raced inside to recount every detail to Vivian. Vivian smiled at his boundless enthusiasm, her heart overflowing with love for her son and gratitude for the kindness of this remarkable woman. Unbeknownst to them, not too far away in the sprawling city, Vivian's long-lost lover, the man who had once held her heart, had returned and was desperately searching for her. After a week of retracing his steps, Gabriel decided to revisit the neighborhood where he and Vivian had once lived. He walked slowly through the familiar compound, his eyes scanning the faces around him, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone who might remember her. An elderly woman, her face etched with the wisdom of years, sat on a rickety wooden stool, observing the comings and goings of the residents. As she looked up and saw him, she froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Gabriel?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with surprise. "Is that truly you?" Gabriel turned quickly, a surge of hope coursing through him. "Yes, yes, Ma," he said eagerly. "You remember me?" "Of course, I remember you," she replied, her voice laced with a hint of sadness. "You lived here with Vivian." Gabriel took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "Mama, please," he implored, his voice trembling with anxiety. "I came back to find her. Do you know where she is now? Can you tell me anything?" The elderly woman sighed deeply, her eyes clouding with concern. "My son," she said gravely, "you left, and not long after Vivian discovered that she was pregnant." Gabriel's eyes widened in disbelief. "Pregnant?" he whispered, the word barely audible. "Yes," the woman confirmed. "She had a beautiful child, a son, but then she became ill, very ill. She struggled to provide for herself and the child, and eventually, she could no longer afford to stay here. One day, She packed her meager belongings and left. Nobody knows where she went. Gabriel swallowed hard, the woman's words hitting him like a physical blow. Vivian had a child. A son. His son. He ran a hand through his hair, struggling to breathe, the weight of his absence pressing down on him. So, she left with the child? He asked quietly, his voice filled with anguish. Yes, the woman replied sadly. And she didn't tell anyone where she was going. Gabriel turned away, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Vivian, you suffered all alone, he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. He turned back to the elderly woman, his voice filled with a newfound determination. Thank you, Ma. Thank you for telling me. I must find her. I must find both of them. The elderly woman nodded sadly, her face etched with concern. I truly hope you do, my son. They deserve to be found. Gabriel walked back to his car slowly, his chest heavy with regret, but his mind filled with a fierce resolve. He was no longer searching for a woman he had once loved. He was searching for his family, his Vivian, his son. And he vowed that he would not rest until he had found them and made amends for the years of separation and hardship. One evening, Gabriel sat alone in the expansive living room of the luxurious mansion he had recently purchased in a prime location in the city. Worry etched deep lines on his face. He picked up his phone and dialed his driver's number. Have you checked all the places I asked you to investigate? Gabriel asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Yes, sir, the driver replied, his voice respectful. Every single one, but unfortunately, nobody seems to know a woman named Vivian. Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to imagine Vivian and the child he had never known. He pictured the immense suffering they must have endured alone, without help, without support. The thought of Vivian struggling to survive, and the agonizing image of his own son enduring hardship somewhere in the vast city, filled him with an overwhelming sense of guilt and responsibility. He couldn't help but wonder how many other people were facing similar struggles, how many more mothers were battling illness and poverty, and how many more children were suffering in silence. And right then, in that moment of profound realization, Gabriel made a life-altering decision. If he couldn't locate Vivian immediately, he would dedicate his resources to helping others in similar situations, offering hope and support to those who desperately needed it. He turned to his driver, his voice filled with renewed purpose. Begin searching for local hospitals and clinics in the most remote and underserved areas of the city. I want to make significant donations to help sick people receive the medical care they need. Right away, sir, the driver responded promptly. The following morning, Gabriel's phone buzzed with a new message. His driver had sent him the address of a small, unassuming hospital nestled deep within a remote and impoverished neighborhood. Gabriel immediately rose from his chair, grabbed his jacket, and headed outside. His sleek black SUV and the accompanying security vehicles were already waiting for him. His driver respectfully opened the door, and Gabriel stepped inside, eager to begin his mission. As they navigated through the narrow, winding streets, the scenery gradually changed from bustling cityscapes to dilapidated buildings and unpaved roads. Gabriel peered out the window, his heart aching at the sight of such widespread poverty. This place is so far removed from everything, he whispered, his voice filled with sorrow. The people here must be suffering immensely. Suddenly, his stomach growled, reminding him that he had skipped breakfast in his haste. He realized he was hungry, but they were now too deep within the remote area to find any of the fancy restaurants he usually frequented. He was running out of options. Then, in the distance, he spotted it. A small, but meticulously clean roadside food stall, its humble facade a beacon of hope amidst the surrounding squalor. Smoke billowed from a large pot outside, filling the air with the tantalizing aroma of local spices. A simple wooden bench sat invitingly by the entrance, offering weary travelers a place to rest. It was a far cry from the luxurious dining experiences he was accustomed to, but it exuded an undeniable sense of warmth and authenticity. Stop here, Gabriel instructed his driver. The convoy of vehicles halted in front of the small shop, drawing the attention of the few passers-by. His driver quickly exited the vehicle and opened the door for him. As he stepped out, his gaze was immediately drawn to a small figure beside the shop. A young boy, thin and quiet, was meticulously washing plates with his tiny hands. The soapy water splashed onto his worn shorts, but he seemed oblivious to the discomfort, completely engrossed in the task at hand. He washed each plate with care, his brow furrowed in concentration. Gabriel observed him closely, struck by his diligence and the seriousness with which he approached such a mundane task. There was something about his careful movements, the focused expression on his face, that transported Gabriel back to his own childhood, reminding him of the struggles he had faced and the values he had learned. A smile flickered across his face, a mixture of amusement and admiration. Drawn by an irresistible curiosity, he slowly approached the boy. "What is your name, young man?" Gabriel asked gently, his voice filled with warmth. The child looked up, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of the imposing figure before him. "Austin," he replied softly. Gabriel nodded slowly, his gaze softening. "Austin, that's a very nice name." Before Gabriel could continue the conversation, a young woman emerged from the shop, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. It was Nora. "Good afternoon, sir," Nora said politely, her voice tinged with caution. "Welcome to my shop. What can I get for you today?" Gabriel turned his attention to her, assessing her for a moment, then looked back at Austin. There was something about the boy, something intangible and deeply affecting, that held his attention captive. His eyes were bright and intelligent, but his face bore a seriousness that seemed beyond his years. And yet, he continued to wash the plates with unwavering focus and dedication. A sudden wave of compassion washed over Gabriel, eclipsing his original intention of simply grabbing a quick bite to eat. The plan he had formulated earlier, to donate to the local hospitals and help those in need, now seemed to take on a more immediate and personal significance. "Madam," Gabriel began, his voice laced with sincerity, "may I ask why this young boy is not in school? Today is Monday, and it's almost afternoon already." Nora hesitated, her smile fading slightly as she glanced at Austin, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and protectiveness. "He's not in school because things are difficult for him and his family," she explained, her voice low. "His mother is very sick and unable to work. They simply can't afford the school fees." Gabriel's gaze returned to Austin, and something deep within him shifted. A profound sense of compassion, an overwhelming desire to alleviate the boy's suffering, flooded his heart. His eyes softened, reflecting the empathy he felt. "Perhaps this is where I need to begin," he thought to himself. "Perhaps this is the purpose for which I was led to this place." He turned back to Nora, his voice now filled with a quiet resolve. "Would it be possible for me to meet your mother?" Gabriel asked softly, his eyes pleading for understanding. Nora took a step forward, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Sir," she said cautiously, "why do you want to meet her? I need to know your intentions. I can't just allow anyone to follow this boy home. I need to be certain that your reason is safe and genuine." Gabriel nodded gently, recognizing and respecting her apprehension. "I understand your concern," he said sincerely. "I assure you, I am not here to cause harm to anyone. I came to this area because I am planning to donate to the local hospitals and support sick people in need. When you mentioned that Austin's mother is very ill, I thought perhaps I could offer her some assistance as well." Nora scrutinized him carefully, her expression softening slightly. After a moment of contemplation, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said hesitantly. "If your intention is truly to help, then you can come with us. Their home is not far from here." Gabriel signaled to his driver, who remained patiently by the vehicle. Nora quickly locked up her shop, then took Austin's hand, leading him towards one of the vehicles. As they climbed inside, Nora held Austin close, reassuring him with a gentle squeeze. The convoy of vehicles moved slowly through the narrow, winding streets, navigating the uneven terrain with caution. Finally, They arrived at a dilapidated, unfinished building, its walls scarred with age and neglect. "This is where we live," Austin said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel's heart clenched with pain at the sight of their meager dwelling. He took a slow, deliberate step inside the building, his apprehension growing with each stride. As he entered the small, dimly lit room, he froze, his body paralyzed with shock. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes widening in disbelief. His hands fell limply to his sides, his mind reeling from the scene before him. Lying on a thin, worn mat, her body weakened by illness, her breath shallow and labored, was the woman he had been searching for all these years. The woman he loved with all his heart. Vivian. Gabriel stared at her in stunned silence, unable to move, unable to speak. The years of searching, the countless hours of worry, the burning desire to find her, all culminated in this moment of profound and overwhelming revelation. Nothing in the world could have prepared him for this. Gabriel stood in the small, cramped room, his body rigid, his mind overwhelmed. His eyes, wide with disbelief, darted around the room, taking in every detail of the squalid surroundings. His lips trembled, his chest heaving with emotion. "Vivian! Vivian!" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding of his heart. Vivian opened her eyes slowly, her vision blurred by weakness and fatigue. At first, she couldn't make out the figure standing in the doorway, but as her eyes gradually focused, she too froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Gabriel?" she whispered, her voice shaking with disbelief. It felt as if time itself had stopped, as if the entire world had held its breath in anticipation of this moment. Before anyone could utter another word, Gabriel surged forward, his pent-up emotions erupting in a torrent of urgency. "Guards!" he shouted, his voice commanding and resolute. "Carefully carry her out of here. Take her to the nearest hospital immediately. She needs medical treatment right now." His security guards, trained to react swiftly and decisively, sprang into action, lifting Vivian gently from the mat and carrying her carefully outside. Austin, overwhelmed by the sudden chaos, stood frozen in one corner of the room, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. He instinctively clutched Nora's hand tightly, seeking comfort and reassurance. "Auntie, are we going with them?" he whispered, his voice trembling with anxiety. "Yes, Austin," Nora said softly, her voice filled with a mixture of compassion and hope. "We are going with your mommy." They both followed the guards outside, and one of the vehicles was immediately opened for them. Nora climbed in with Austin, holding him close as the door closed, her heart pounding with anticipation. The convoy of Gabriel's vehicles sped away from the dilapidated building, heading straight for the hospital, their sirens cutting through the silence of the impoverished neighborhood. With Gabriel in one car, the guards carrying Vivian in another, and Nora and little Austin huddled together in the third, they raced against time, praying silently that Vivian would survive. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed Vivian into the emergency ward, their movements precise and efficient. They ran a battery of tests, monitoring her breathing, checking her blood, and assessing the extent of the damage caused by her prolonged illness. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor emerged from the emergency ward to meet with Gabriel, his face etched with concern. "Sir," he said somberly, "your friend is very ill, but there is still hope. She is suffering from severe kidney failure and requires a kidney transplant as soon as possible. If she doesn't receive a transplant quickly, her condition will deteriorate rapidly." Gabriel didn't hesitate for even a second. He turned to the doctor, his eyes filled with unwavering resolve. "Start the process immediately," he said firmly. "Book the surgery abroad at the best hospital in the world. I will handle all the arrangements and cover all the expenses." He pulled out his phone and began making a series of urgent calls, his voice commanding and resolute. He was prepared to move mountains, to spend every last penny he had, to do whatever it took to save Vivian's life. While all this was unfolding, he also remembered Austin and Nora, the two individuals who had played such a crucial role in caring for Vivian. He turned to one of his security guards, issuing a new set of instructions. "Take the boy and the young lady to my house," he commanded. "Make sure they are comfortable and well taken care of." Nora was stunned by his generosity and concern. "Sir, why?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Why do you care so much about these people? How do you even know Austin's mother?" Gabriel simply replied, his voice tinged with a hint of mystery. "You will understand everything later. For now, please just take care of Austin." Nora looked at Austin's worried face, her heart softening with compassion. She nodded slowly, agreeing to his request. "Okay, sir," she said quietly. "I will stay with him." She squeezed Austin's hand gently as the guard led them towards the waiting SUV. As they drove away, Austin stared out the window in amazement, his eyes wide with wonder. They were headed towards a part of the city he had never seen before, a world of sprawling mansions and meticulously landscaped gardens. "Auntie," he asked, his voice filled with disbelief, "are we actually going to live here?" "For now, yes," Nora replied with a small, reassuring smile. "You are safe here, Austin. You have nothing to worry about." Within 3 days, everything moved with lightning speed. Gabriel used his vast resources and extensive connections to arrange all the necessary travel documents and medical paperwork. He settled all the outstanding medical bills and made sure that Vivian was flown abroad for the life-saving surgery. Gabriel himself offered to donate one of his kidneys, without a moment's hesitation. The operation was long and complex, requiring the expertise of the best surgeons in the world. Doctors worked tirelessly for hours, their focus unwavering, and finally, the operation was deemed a success. Vivian had to remain in the hospital for several days to recover, her body weakened by years of illness and malnutrition. Gabriel stayed by her side throughout her recovery, providing her with unwavering support and encouragement. Days later, when Vivian had regained a little more strength, she heard the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps approaching her ward. The room was quiet and peaceful, bathed in soft, filtered light. She opened her eyes gently, her gaze drawn to the figure standing beside her bed. It was Gabriel. He stood there, moving cautiously because he was still recovering from the kidney donation himself. His face was pale and drawn, his eyes underscored with fatigue, but his gaze was soft and full of love and compassion. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down slowly, his presence radiating warmth and reassurance. "Vivian," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "You are safe now." Vivian blinked, her brow furrowing in confusion. What happened?" she whispered, her voice raspy and weak. "Gabriel, why did we lose contact all those years ago? Where did you go? I wanted to tell you that I was pregnant. Austin is your child. I wanted you to know." Gabriel leaned closer, gently taking her hand in his. "Vivian," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I know now." Vivian's eyes widened slightly, her mind struggling to grasp the reality of what he was saying. You know? Gabriel nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Vivian. When I came back to the country, I went to the old compound where we used to live. An elderly woman there. She remembered me. She told me everything. She said that shortly after I left, you discovered that you were pregnant. She said that life became incredibly difficult for you. She said that you became sick and had to move away, disappearing without a trace." Vivian's eyes filled with tears, her body shaking with a mixture of relief and anguish. Gabriel continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "When I heard that, Vivian, when I heard that you had a child, my child, it gave me an even greater sense of purpose, an even fiercer determination. I told myself, I must find you no matter what it takes. That's why I searched everywhere. That's why I never gave up hope." Vivian covered her mouth with her weak hand, her body racked with sobs. "Vivian," he said softly, his voice filled with love and remorse. "You are the love of my life, my soulmate, my heart. And now that I know that Austin is my son," he paused, holding her hand tighter. I promise you, I will never let either of you suffer again. I will dedicate my life to making up for all the lost time, to providing you with the love, support, and security you both deserve. Vivian let out a slow, ragged breath, a mixture of pain and relief washing over her. Tears streamed down her face, carrying with them the weight of years of hardship and heartbreak. Vivian, he said softly, his voice filled with contrition. I was attacked in a dark street abroad. My phone was stolen. I lost everything, including all my contacts. I didn't know your phone number by heart. I tried desperately to reach you, but no one knew where you were. I worked tirelessly in a small restaurant while simultaneously studying, sacrificing everything to build a better future for myself, hoping that one day I would be able to find you again. I saved every penny I earned and eventually bought a new phone. I discovered an online course that changed my life. I learned the intricacies of technology, mastered the art of coding, and became a skilled tech expert. That course ultimately led me to co-found a company that eventually achieved incredible success. Vivian listened intently, her eyes riveted on his face, her heart swelling with a mixture of pain and joy. I planned to come back here as soon as I could, to use my newfound success to find you and provide you with the life you deserved. Vivian covered her mouth with her trembling hand, her body convulsing with sobs. Gabriel, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought you had forgotten me. I thought you had moved on and found someone else. Never, he said softly, his voice filled with unwavering certainty. Not for one single day did I ever forget you, Vivian. You have always been in my heart, and you always will be. They wept together, their tears mingling, their hearts finally finding a measure of peace after years of separation and suffering. Vivian asked suddenly, her voice laced with anxiety, Where is Austin? Is he okay? Is he safe? Gabriel smiled gently, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He's fine, he reassured her. He's with the kind food seller Nora at my house. They are both safe and well cared for. Vivian let out a weak breath of relief, her body relaxing slightly. Weeks passed slowly, filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Both Vivian and Gabriel gradually recovered from their respective ordeals, their bodies slowly regaining strength, their spirits buoyed by the unwavering support of those around them. At the end of those long, arduous weeks, they were finally discharged from the hospital, ready to begin their new life together. Vivian walked slowly towards the sleek black SUV that had been arranged for their transport, her legs still weak from the surgery and prolonged illness. Gabriel, ever attentive and caring, held her gently by the arm, providing her with support and reassurance as she settled into the comfortable seat. The driver closed the door with a respectful nod, and they drove away from the hospital, heading straight for the airport, their hearts filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. They boarded the private jet and flew back home, back to the country they had both left behind so many years ago, back to a new beginning, a future filled with hope and promise. When the plane finally touched down, Gabriel's driver was already waiting for them at the airport, eager to welcome them home. The driver whisked them away from the airport and drove them straight to Gabriel's sprawling mansion, their new home, a symbol of their resilience and their enduring love. Inside the mansion, Austin and Nora sat together on the long, plush couch, their bodies tense with anticipation. They had been waiting almost impatiently for their arrival, their minds racing with worry and excitement. Austin kept glancing towards the door, his small face etched with concern. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Austin's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, the world holding its breath. Then he saw her. "Mommy!" he screamed, his voice filled with joy and relief. Vivian opened her arms wide, her eyes overflowing with tears. "My son!" she cried, her voice thick with emotion. Austin launched himself from the couch and ran straight into her arms, burying his face in her embrace. He clung to her tightly, crying and laughing at the same time, his body trembling with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Mommy, you can walk again," he exclaimed, his voice muffled by her embrace. "Yes, my darling child, Vivian whispered, her voice filled with love and gratitude. I can walk again, thanks to your wonderful father. Nora stood up from the couch, her heart swelling with happiness and admiration. Auntie Vivian, look at you, she exclaimed, her face beaming with a wide smile. You look so strong. Thank God for this miracle. Vivian smiled warmly at Nora, her eyes shining with gratitude. But then her smile slowly faded, her face becoming calm, serious, and thoughtful. She looked at Gabriel, standing proudly beside her, his eyes filled with love. Then, she turned back to Austin, her gaze softening with maternal tenderness. Austin, she said gently, her voice soft but steady. Come and sit down beside me, my darling. Mommy wants to tell you something important. Austin sat down slowly, still holding tightly to her hand, his eyes wide with curiosity. Vivian took a deep breath, her voice filled with emotion. My son, she said softly. This man standing beside me, Gabriel, he is your father. Austin blinked, his small mouth opening in a silent gasp of shock. My father? He whispered, his eyes darting between Vivian and Gabriel, trying to comprehend the weight of her words. Nora covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes widening in surprise. Suddenly, everything made sense to her. She now understood why Gabriel had been so deeply invested in their well-being, why he had moved so quickly and decisively to save Vivian's life, why his eyes had softened every time he looked at Austin. Gabriel moved closer and knelt down in front of Austin, bringing himself to his eye level. Austin, he said softly, his voice filled with remorse. I know that I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. I know that I wasn't there when you were born, and I wasn't there to watch you grow up. But I promise you, from this day forward, I will always be here for you. I will never leave you again. Austin didn't know how to, but Nora insisted on finishing her schooling first. I've been saving little by little, she explained. Gabriel nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. And where are you staying, Nora? I have a small, single-room apartment, just for myself. Nora hesitated, then answered, I have a small, one-room place too. Gabriel nodded slowly again. Tomorrow, he declared, his voice firm with resolve. I will get you a real apartment, a good one, a safe one. Nora's eyes widened in astonishment. An apartment? For me? She whispered, scarcely believing her ears. Yes, Gabriel affirmed. You deserve so much more than what you have. You deserve a better life, Nora. The next day dawned bright and clear. Gabriel drove Nora to a stunning building in a prime area of the city, the kind of place she'd only ever dreamed of. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, gleaming set of keys, pressing them into her hand. That apartment is yours, he said, a warm smile gracing his lips. You will live here, in comfort and security. Nora could only stare at the keys in utter disbelief, her fingers trembling slightly as she clutched them. Thank you, sir, she managed, her voice choked with emotion. I don't even know how to begin to thank you. Gabriel smiled and shook his head gently. There's no need for thanks, Nora. You helped my son, you showed him compassion when he needed it most. This is the least I can do. But Gabriel wasn't content with just providing her with a home. He began to formulate a plan for Nora's entire future. He understood that juggling the demands of running a business and attending school would be an impossible feat for one person. So, with his characteristic decisiveness, he arranged for a team of dedicated workers to be hired, individuals who would operate directly under Nora's guidance and direction. A few days later, Gabriel gathered everyone together, ushering them into his SUV. Eschewing the usual security convoy, they traveled in a single vehicle, a symbol of the newfound trust and unity. They drove to a sprawling complex, the scale of which Nora had never witnessed before. She stepped out of the car, her breath catching in her throat. Before her stood a brand-new restaurant, its bright signboard proclaiming in bold letters, Nora's Kitchen. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. That's my name, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, Gabriel said, his eyes twinkling with pride. "This is your restaurant, Nora. I had it built for you. The workers will manage the day-to-day operations while you focus on your studies. Consider it an investment in your future." Tears welled up in Nora's eyes and streamed down her face, a mixture of joy, gratitude, and overwhelming disbelief. Is this real?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "It is real, Nora," Gabriel assured her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. He then handed her a crisp, official-looking envelope. Nora opened it slowly, her hands shaking so violently that the paper rustled. Her eyes scanned the contents, widening with each line she read. It's my admission letter," she exclaimed, her voice filled with elation. "I got into school. I actually got in." "Yes, you did, Nora," Gabriel said warmly, his voice filled with genuine happiness. "Your future is waiting for you. Go and seize it." Weeks turned into months. Vivian's health improved dramatically, her strength returning with each passing day. Nora diligently prepared for her studies, excited about the prospect of learning and building a brighter future. And Nora's kitchen flourished, becoming a popular spot in the neighborhood, a testament to Nora's inherent business acumen. Their lives, once shrouded in darkness, were slowly but surely becoming illuminated with hope and happiness. One quiet evening, during a peaceful dinner, Gabriel cleared his throat, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Vivian," he began gently, drawing her attention. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with affection. Gabriel stood from his chair, took a deep breath, and then knelt down on one knee, taking Vivian's hand in his. "Let's make everything official," he said softly, his gaze unwavering. "Vivian, will you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife? Will you marry me?" Vivian gasped, covering her mouth with her hand, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Gabriel, I will marry you." Austin, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide-eyed anticipation, jumped up and down with glee, clapping his hands and shouting with joy. Gabriel embraced Vivian tightly, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. In the following 2 months, they planned a beautiful wedding, a celebration of their love and commitment to one another. Vivian's life had been miraculously restored, her spirit renewed. Austin's dreams, once shattered, were now brimming with possibility. Nora's future had been opened wide, filled with opportunities she had never dared to imagine. And Gabriel, after years of loneliness and loss, had finally found the family he had longed for. A few days after the wedding, Gabriel began making arrangements for their travel documents. He wanted Vivian and Austin to move abroad with him, to start a new chapter in their lives, where they could live together as a happy and complete family, free from the shadows of the past. 1 week later, everything was in order. They packed their bags, said heartfelt goodbyes to Nora, promising to stay in touch, and embarked on their journey abroad, ready to embrace a new life filled with peace, security, and unwavering hope. Nora stayed behind, but her life was irrevocably changed. She continued her education, excelling in her studies, and thrived in her beautiful new apartment, a sanctuary of comfort and safety. And her restaurant business continued to flourish, becoming a local success story, a testament to her hard work and dedication. She never forgot the profound lesson she had learned, the transformative power of kindness. One small act of compassion, she realized, could unlock doors that no one ever expected, and it could change a life forever. In the end, this story reminds us of something profoundly important, that one small act of kindness can ripple outwards, transforming not just one life, but many. One moment of genuine love can heal even the most broken of hearts. And one helping hand, extended with compassion and generosity, can lift an entire family from the depths of despair to the heights of joy. Nora could never have foreseen that offering a simple meal to a hungry boy would open the floodgates to a series of miracles, transforming her life and the lives of those around her. Kindness, it seems, never truly dies. It always finds its way back, perhaps not immediately, perhaps not in the way we expect, but it always returns, laden with blessings. My dear viewers, what are your thoughts on this inspiring and heartwarming story? Please share your reflections in the comment section below. I would be thrilled to read your perspectives. And guess what? In just a few days, I will be uploading another captivating and thought-provoking story. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and activate the notification bell so you will be alerted as soon as it goes live. If you found this story to be enjoyable and uplifting, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Thank you so much for watching.